My name is Melanie Doyle. I teach in the English department as a per-course instructor, and I'm also an educational developer at CITL. My co-presenter, Sanaz, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Business, and I'm a per-course instructor in the same faculty.
So in our presentation today, we're going to share a little bit about our kind of diverse teaching approaches, both pertaining to generative AI in very different teaching contexts. This presentation grew out of, am I okay? Okay. Our presentation, I guess, grew out of a conversation that started in Memorial's community of practice on AI and teaching. Sorry without you.
I was in the wrong place at the right time.
You can take over later. So yeah, as part of the community of practice, instructors from across departments and faculties have been kind of coming together monthly to share our struggles and our successes and our frustrations around AI and teaching. And Sanaz and I kind of latched on or recognized that we were doing very different things, but achieving similar goals. So we thought it would be an interesting perspective to share to kind of counter this and how this kind of supports AI literacy development overall. Can I share this or to make it an actual session? Okay. Great. Thanks for being here.
We thought that it would be valuable to see our different cases side by side and then discuss what was our perspective and share our shared focus, which was AI literacy. So first, we're going to discuss the unexpected ways AI transform academia and what are the possible responses, what is AI literacy, and how we can contribute to it. Using two cases, one is information system, which I taught, and the other one is critical reading and writing in the Department of English. And we finally discuss or conclude about how we could support the students' AI literacy. So since OpenAI introduced the free access to ChatGPT 3.5, a lot of debate raised about how we can use these tools in the classrooms. ChatGPT has also paved the way for many other tools to the classroom. And some faculty members and researchers like Van der Waals, who is like a father of process mining in one of the IS streams, thought and compared it to the calculator and said, okay, calculator in 1970s was a controversial topic in the classroom. And we finally found our way how to use them in the classroom because we found that it has twofold effects. Positively, it is accurate, it is fast, and it helps the student to focus on concepts and problem-solving skills, and negatively, it might over-reliance of a student on that tool will could negatively affect arithmetic skill set. So, but we eventually found out how to use them in the classrooms. On the other hand, we have a lot of people that have a lot of concerns about data privacy, bias, and academic integrity, and the potential over-reliance on these tools, and they continue to prompting university to carefully navigate the ethical implication of integrating such tools in the classroom. So there are four. Actually, I have. Go to the next slide. Doesn't work. Oh, okay. So there one slide describes four possible responses towards this AI, generative AI tools in the classroom. The first is do nothing, like do whatever you used to do. The second is prohibit all the uses of generative AI. Second, allow limited usage or fully embrace generative AI tools in the classroom. So what we want to, it was like many discussions started worldwide at MON. People from different faculty, medicine, education, business, even computer science joined the meeting, and they were discussed about this topic. we had different courses, different requirements, and we found that it's very domain centric. So we also understand that the instructor's philosophy and the level of technology acceptance that they have is effective, and it's important to think about before this type of decisions. Also, we know that universities' adoption of AI policy is really slow, and they have a lot of challenge for the tools that if they want to use to detect or assert violence, because they are usually inaccurate, they have a lot of bias, and they have a lot of risk for privacy breaches. So like eventually, that's some of the challenge. And on the other hand, some people said that why should we ban it? Because it is an inseparable part of the future, and students should experience it. So what we want to talk about today is how we can support AI literacy, because regardless of instructor preference or the domain-related view that they might have, it's actually what we want to do at university is like improving or developing literacy, and in this case, AI literacy. Supporting AI literacy also prepares students to use AI tools responsibly and effectively in the future. So I will turn it over to Melanie to discuss and explain what is AI literacy and what is our framework.
Awesome. Thank you, Sanaz. Thanks. So there are a lot of, I guess, possible definitions and frameworks available on AI literacy, and many of these extend well before the launch of ChatGPT, so to speak. But we're working with a specific definition today to kind of guide us through our presentation, and that is one by Long and Magerko, who say that AI literacy is a set of attitudes and competences that support students to critically evaluate and effectively use AI technologies. So within this definition, they emphasize both that critically evaluate and effectively use. And I think that kind of duality is important because, there may be many of us in this room, we're broadly on campus, maybe myself included, who don't really want to be using a lot of these technologies, may not want our students using them at some times, but yet still who recognize that we have some responsibility and necessity to be able to evaluate the outputs of these tools, discern what it is we see online, and just identify the impact it's having in our working lives, our professional lives, our teaching and research lives. Which is why I guess the literacy element is so important of this. Within their framework, they identify and kind of trace the history of many other literacies and how they influence AI literacy. Specifically, that includes media literacy, information literacy, data literacy. And while they may have some different disciplinary and epistemological backgrounds, they're all kind of relevant to different aspects when we think about what it means to be AI literate. More broadly, I suppose, Long and Magerko also situate AI literacy as or recognize, I guess, the political influence of that and draw on literacy's ability to empower students and really elevate their access to knowledge and be able to share and communicate within their disciplines, within knowledge communities going forward. And that's where that phrase critical literacy comes in that we see so prominently across education literature. Thanks. So among the definitions out there around AI literacy, many refer quite specifically to critical AI literacy. And just like when we talk about critical reading or critical writing or critical thinking, there are a lot of different assumptions or thoughts around what that critical means. Malha Bali, who has become a quite prominent writer on AI in higher education, identifies kind of two important definitions of critical that I think are relevant for us to keep in mind. One is around that critical thinking, that being skeptical, understanding, really digging deep and questioning what we see out there. And the other is related to critical pedagogy as a means to achieve social justice. From that critical perspective, Bali argues that both are necessary when we talk about any literacy, but especially AI literacy. What is the value of being critical thinkers, interrogating what we see to really deepen our knowledge if we're not using those skills to for socially just purposes? We need both in this case. She also argues that we need both in order to fully critique and validate the accuracy, the bias, potential problems that are frequent in AI outputs, AI detectors, and so on. So we don't want to negate that critical element, but given that we are working most closely with the Long and Magerko framework, we just refer to AI literacy kind of broadly, I guess, throughout our presentation. But in many of the competencies they describe, that critical element comes out very explicitly. Oh, there you go. So again, Long and Magerko define AI literacy as that set of competencies that students or all people need to critically evaluate and effectively use AI technologies. And they outline 5 kind of broad groups to sort or categorize 17 competencies overall. Some of these are very broad, some of these are very narrow, specific. And certainly they are not all relevant to all disciplines or all teaching approaches or all activities that we may engage in our civic life. But they do argue that to be fully AI literate, acknowledging that this is a constantly moving target, we need to recognize what is AI, what is it that we see, what does this mean, what can AI do, what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the risks, limitations, how does it work? That pertains a lot of competencies around the back end, the data, which are like way over my head, I'll be honest. How AI should be used, getting at some of those ethical questions, and finally, how do people perceive AI in our lives? So we don't hope to argue that all of these are necessary or can all be implemented in every situation. So instead, we've chosen to unpack 4 a little bit to show the applicability of many of these to our teaching. So we've chosen just 4 here that we see as highly transferable, and that even though we teach in very different contexts and have somewhat differing philosophies on AI use in general, we both feel we've been able to support our students in developing these competencies around AI use. So competency 1 encourages students and all users to distinguish between technological artifacts that use and do not use AI. Again, drawing on many of the information literacy and media literacy skills that we're hopefully already encouraging our students to develop. Competency 5 encourages the ability to identify tasks AI excels at and tasks it does not, and learning to determine when we may be able to use some of these tools and when instead we want to leverage our human capabilities. This has been, I think, a really important one across disciplines. There might be very many beneficial, applicable uses of these tools, and sometimes when, the old-fashioned way works just as well. Competency 10 recognizes that humans play an important role in programming, choosing models, fine-tuning AI systems. That may have many different meanings across departments and disciplines and epistemologies, whether that is from the data perspective, how these are created, but also the ethical implications of the humans that create these tools, the training material, and bias that comes up through that. And finally, competency 16, which asks us to identify and describe different perspectives on those key ethical issues surrounding AI, which is again when some of that critical pedagogy comes into play. So again, these are, oh, sorry, back for 1 second. Sorry, so again, these are just 4 of the 17 total competencies outlined in this framework. So it's really tip of the iceberg. And later in the presentation, we'll touch a little more specifically on individual competencies that we think we were able to draw out in our specific teaching contexts. But we included these here just to kind of demonstrate that from very differing perspectives, we're still able to work towards some similar goals across teaching contexts, across departments, and across backgrounds. And this is important to us, and I think to most people, because wherever you may fall between wanting to fully ban AI or wanting to fully embrace it, we all have a role that we can play in supporting that AI literacy development. And we can argue that we may need to do some of that. We may need to develop those literacy skills because ChatGPT, similar tools are becoming so integrated in the way we live and work and write and teach. I think we're reaching a place where you're using Edge or Microsoft Word, and there's AI kind of operating in the background in ways that you may not even recognize at times. So as these continues to grow and change our learning environments, we want our students to understand what these tools are, how they work, when they might be useful, but also the risks that might be inherent in those as well. So, for both our students as learners, and also I think just to have a functioning democratic society, we want students to be able to make sound judgments about when these tools may be useful and when we want to be a little more critical. So we did this in very different ways in our own teaching practices. So hopefully our two cases illustrate different approaches that you might be able to take in your own classroom, regardless of context, regardless of how you may personally feel about these tools. So I'll turn it back to Sanaz to share a little more about her business class on information systems.
So so I'm teaching introduction to information system as faculty of business to undergraduate student and graduate diploma or MBA student. So in the course is usually usually around 20 students to 44 maximum, and mainly they're international students. And last semester was my third time teaching this course in person. So like the general goal of this course is knowing the role of information system in modern organization. How we, what are the IS strategic value and how we can create competitive advantage. We usually give a very broad knowledge about different IS tools and including AI. And the goal is empowering a student to contribute effectively to IS project in the organization. So as it sounds, the course generally or overall is about organizational level, but we also cover some individual micro level and like environmental, societal impact of AI, of IS, so sort of macro level as well. A little bit about my philosophy is like I as a general is facing a lot of changes. So it's like the environment is changing rapidly, and we need a student to learn how to learn. So we need self-learners. So that's like my how I frame my course usually to make them learn how to learn a new technology. Again, I encourage them to use that, but with the same reason, I encourage them to utilize AI tools as much as possible, and I try to be a mentor there, like just give them feedback. And in our first session, I explain all these philosophy, and I tell them like, hey, I don't want to police you. Be transparent about using AI. I want you to share that. It's something that is new to me as well, and we want to learn together. I encourage them, like, I give them some example of APA 7th edition, and I ask them to share their opinion. I know it's not enough to tell them because they might not even trust you, but like eventually they will understand that that's like the goal that we want to learn. And finally, I always remind myself that to be kind, because the students are not like all lazy and they want to use AI tools because they just want to do it fast. And like they don't trust themselves, so they don't trust what they are writing in the assignments is not enough. So like keeping that in my mind, because like I need that to to constantly remind myself of that. So why AI literacy was important for me was I did when like ChatGPT announced like access to ChatGPT 3.5, I did like an experiment in the class, a small experiment. So like 14 students, 2 groups randomly assigned, and they should rate the ethical scenarios from strongly ethical to strongly unethical. Group A should answer the questions themselves. Then they should consult with ChatGPT, and then they should answer the questions again. Group B, they consult with ChatGPT first, and then they answer the questions. So what I saw, and maybe we guess, is like Group B had less diverse answers because they have like sort of something we call anchoring bias. So like they see an answer and they, answer the same thing. But the shocking part or the alarming point for me was when I saw students' answer change after like a 1-minute chat with ChatGPT. And don't forget, the questions were ethical questions. So for me, like it was not a calculator anymore. So it was something that affects people's mind. And it's important that when we need that diversity in the classroom. We don't want to erase the voices or change the opinions in the classroom. So for me, that point, I was thinking that, oh, okay, I should do something. It's like IS class, and it's like the best place to work around this problem. So I didn't know that framework, the AI literacy framework, but I was thinking that it's crucial to think about or teach a student when to use AI, what are AI risks and weaknesses, and how to judge the outcome. So how I did it, actually. So these are the competencies that have the same goals in the framework. Competency number 5, as Melanie explained, is like determine when to use AI and when don't. Competency 12, learning from data, recognizing that computers often learn from the data. So if like the whole knowledge of like the humanity is in this level, we might not know all these, like individually we're like less than that, but AI cannot bring us in a higher level than that as well. And competency 13, critically interpreting data and knowing that like during the training process of these AI tools, we might unwantedly even add bias to their results. So it's like really important to know those when you're using these tools. So what was my strategies in the classroom to support a student's AI literacy? The first thing, and NG et al. Can back me up on that, is teachers' AI literacy is important. So we cannot ignore the AI in the class, we should learn. So what I do is, like in a more practical way, I talk with the students specifically after the course, and I said, okay, what type of software did you use? What was your experience? And I usually share that with the next semester student. So I learned, like, I try to understand what are the current platforms. There are like 1,000 of them there. Just try to share my own experience and said, okay, like last week I wanted to post a LinkedIn post and I wanted to use AI and it didn't work because like this and that. So good practices, like, okay, you can use it this way, and failures. So both are valuable insights to add to the classroom. And I think it's really important to share those experiences with the student. Yeah, another strategy that I implemented in the class was I changed my assignment to focus more on the process and the methodology. So the rubric also is important to support you in that regard. So instead of like, if I have a literature review, for example, instead of like focusing on a great findings, I ask them to report how did they find those findings. So that's like really, actually, it was really helpful for me. And in the class with the like this the goal that we have. And then incorporating other skills in the classroom, like presentation skills, storytelling skills, or adding digital accessibility to the rubric, to the course, that like make the digital document more accessible for everybody. So like adding more skills or incorporating other skills in the assignment. The fourth one was like connecting course content to personal experience. So when you use these sort of tools and you see the outcome, it's easier to judge if they are relevant and accurate if you know the context. So if you share your experience with AI tools and they gave you some feedback, and then you see, okay, a little misinterpretation or a little change in wording can be completely inaccurate. So you can judge it easier because it's your own experience and it's not something new that you don't really know about it. So how exactly I did it, I wanted to go through an example and like explain more in an example. So one of the course assignment was a workshop. In the second workshop, I asked a student to explore and evaluate a 3D virtual platform, meeting platform. The name is FrameVR. And compare it sort of with Zoom and WebEx and other virtual meeting tools. And they should make a 1-minute video and then writing one report saying what are the good points and bad points, pros and cons of this like platform. And the report that they should report it in a way that is connected to their video. So again, the same strategy that I had, like incorporating different skill sets together and like, yeah. So what happened was 80% of the students for the reporting section, they use ChatGPT. And it was really obvious because like 10 students was like 10 group. Answers were very identical, using some terms that I was sure they don't know. And so what I did was I used the Edge Copilot and copy and paste my instruction, and I said, okay, like give me the answer. And then the good part for Microsoft Copilot is that it has some links to the page that it refers to. The citation is clear and have like those links. So you could see that like most of the citation was referencing to the main platform's blog post. So we don't judge a platform by their own claims. Like I claim that I'm really great. I'm like, I don't know, I do magic and everything. So that was like, I showed them, I was like, okay, you're talking about these tools, but you're using their own blog post 2 years ago. So it doesn't like really make sense. And then what I did for the grading, again, rubric is a good element to think about, was in the evaluation, I put a considerable grade reduction for that connection to their video. So if like they say a spatial audio, for example, is like something that they support, if they didn't check the megaphone and microphone, the spatial audio is like when you're like the avatar, as you saw in the previous video, if you're close to each other, you can hear the microphone. But if you're further away, you cannot hear each other. So if they didn't mention those features in their video, or like they didn't explain that features, it doesn't make sense to mention a spatial audio as like a pros of this or good point of this platform. So I gave them like a good amount of grade reduction. So like the maximum, for example, for those students who use AI was 50, and then like the minimum for the students who were like sharing their own experience was like more than 60, 70. So I think it's really important to the students see that difference. So overall, I think it was a good experience, and like I saw less obvious usage of AI in the last assignment, which was a literature review, and they could have used it much more, but it was like at least less obvious for me. And I think considering the possible tools before when you're designing your course and put some thought about the rubric is really important to consider for like designing a course. And of course, my approach for using AI is not the only way we can use it. And I will now turn to Melanie, and she will explain her own experience in the class.
Thanks, Sanaz. So I guess unlike Sanaz, who was kind of encouraging her students to use it, but in ways that were appropriate and transparent and well articulated and integrated into the course concepts, I had a little bit of a different experience. I teach in the Department of English, primarily English 1090, which is the first semester English course that basically all of our students take in their early undergrad, as well as sometimes 1110. These are both critical reading and writing courses, and I've been teaching them since 2017. I've had a lot of experience in what kind of norms are of the course. But given that they are CRW courses, they are very specifically designed and meant to support our students in developing the reading and writing skills they need to succeed, kind of beginning their course degree into whatever major they may go to. So now it's going to get you that. Thanks. So for anyone who may not be super familiar with these courses, critical reading and writing courses, they're all offered to the faculty of humanities and social science, and they are intended to help students integrate critical reading processes with critical writing. So it's very much kind of merging these two, exploring the connections between our reading and writing, as well as foster increased awareness of and confidence in the effectiveness and use of English language in a variety of disciplines. So while my courses specifically are offered in English, and all CRW courses are offered in HSS, they are intended to kind of facilitate some transfer into whatever discipline students choose to go to. And for CRW courses in the English department specifically, they have somewhat of an additional mandate and place additional emphasis on the construction and clarity of writing, appreciating the skill of writing and literary expression, and understanding and using a variety of prose styles through, careful analysis and critical reading. So given these guidelines developed by HSS and shared across all CRW courses, there's obviously a lot of pressure or a lot at stake if students in CRW courses are misusing AI or overly relying on AI. If you're not engaging in the reading and writing required or submitting writing that is not your own, you're not really meeting the outcomes of a lot of these courses. So while it was important for me, to do my best to ensure my students were authentically doing the work and engaging with it in a meaningful way, I also knew or felt that saying don't use ChatGPT was going to get me absolutely nowhere. That was futile. And I also, just on a personal level, have zero interest in policing student work to that degree. I'm not the person who's going to place hidden white text in a prompt so I can see if students copied and pasted. That's not my jam. That's not who I am as a teacher. So I didn't want to go down that road. So instead, I did my best to mitigate some potential misuse of AI. And I did that in a couple of ways, namely by super scaffolding the writing assignments and activities through course design in a way that really emphasizes writing process. And also by developing, an ethos in the classroom around writing as relationship building. And to do both of those things, I really relied on slow composition pedagogy, which I'll tell you more about right now. So slow composition pedagogy is a writing pedagogy. It's an approach to teaching writing, often credited to Kristen Arola, an American-based composition and rhetoric scholar. It draws on a lot of Indigenous ways of knowing pedagogies. She herself is an Indigenous scholar. And quite literally, it means having students very slowly and over a long period of time engage with intentional writing processes, plural. This is often done through carefully scaffolded writing activities, assignments, and iterative rounds of feedback. Feedback with the student, with peers, with the instructor, so on. So it's important to note, for me, going into this ChatGPT era of higher ed, my English 1090 course was already very much based in this, world of process. It was always an important part of how I structured the class. Students often come into that class not really knowing that writing is a process and that process looks different for everybody. So really kind of getting them to understand that there's many ways that we can go about this. It's always important to me. So you can kind of see here, this is our assessment guidelines rubric or whatever, not rubric, outlined for my past semester. And you'll see the writing process chunk there highlighted in the middle is worth, quite a large percentage of their overall grade. It's worth 20%, which is as much as their largest paper and more than their final portfolio. So for that writing process, there were a lot of components. They included social collaborative reading annotations, where they were reading and annotating our text together. It included essay drafts, which received feedback from me. It included peer review, or what I call reader responses, in which they were giving feedback to one another. And it also included reflections. So these were reflections on their product, what they produced in their essays, but also on their writing process. So they could reflect on and explain to me, why they made the changes they did during the revision. What did they think of their peer review? How did they go from our in-class activities to that first draft? So really having them reflect on that process more than just the product, that final piece of writing. The reading and writing exercises below there were great, kind of weighted separately, but also very much kind of built into the process of this course. And I'll kind of touch back on that more in a minute. So that's so for this past semester, in light of AI and all these other things, and I should also note, for this past fall semester, I was required by my department for the first time to have 2 of their 3 major essays be in class, timed exams, which I'll be honest, I hate. So to kind of counter some of that, I really drew on this slow composition pedagogy so much more for their 3rd essay, to try to counteract some of that, ickiness, I'll say, for lack of a better word. So this is kind of a little diagram of their 3rd paper. And oh no, sorry, that's okay, thanks. And because we move very slowly toward this 3rd paper, and it became, I think, pretty manageable for students, or I heard it was pretty manageable. They were always building on things we had already done in class, usually collaboratively. So see, the first level there is a reading and writing exercise. And these were in-class activities that we would do, usually in pairs or small groups or as a whole class at times, that would usually work on a specific skill. It might be paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is a great example to use here, actually, because they would be invited to kind of work on what they were doing for their essay assignment. So if there was a quote that they were trying to use, we would practice on that quote. So it was authentic to their writing. And I would often bring in sometimes sample ChatGPT or Quillbot generated paraphrases of the kind of popular quotes in our readings. So we can not only practice the quotes they were trying to use in their own writing, but compare them to usually poorly paraphrased quotes from Quillbot. And really help build their confidence when they can see, well, Quillbot is just swapping synonyms, and I know that's not what I'm supposed to do. So I can do a better job than that. It might not be great, but I can do a better job than that. So that worked really well. And then you see evidence that those are the quotes they kind of drew on for their first draft, which they would do peer feedback on, leading to their second draft, which I would then respond to toward their third draft. And throughout that, we're continuing to do reading and writing exercises that I then created from what I was seeing in their drafts. So even though I wouldn't typically respond to that first draft unless I saw someone going like, down the wrong road completely, I would still read them to kind of get a sense of where the group might need more support and ways we could integrate that. So they're getting feedback on the reading and writing exercises, getting feedback on their second draft from me, leading to the third draft, and then completing our final reflection on that whole process. And I've kind of intentionally, kind of continued these dotted lines because even though this was our third paper, all of this built on what we did earlier, even those were in-class essays. And I hope that reflection continues on forward after they left my class. I heard anecdotally from one student that, within this kind of structure, within so many pieces where they're always encouraged to draw on what they've already done, what they're working on with their classmates, that there was just no space to turn to some ChatGPT. The value of what they were working on, of what they had already done, what they were bringing in with their peers, was what mattered more than anything a lot of the time. So that I found that to be a success. And for anyone, I guess, who's maybe background in writing, a lot of this process-based work is already the norm in some, first-year writing classes, especially in American systems that have more composition work. But the thing that slow composition also adds is the real emphasis on relationship building, which I also try to, emulate. So in a recent keynote on that relationality writing, that relationship building, Arola wrote that slow composition reveals in the process itself, acknowledging all the relations and actors that contribute to and hold us accountable for our making. Slow composition recognizes the strength and wisdom that comes through reflection, through making, in community, and for our collective future. So it is this emphasis on how we build knowledge collaboratively with one another through our making, through our composing. So this is the ethos, I guess, I try to instill in my classroom, from day one. And there's a couple ways, I guess, that I was able to do this and how it kind of helped me get around this AI problem, at this AI problem. So in my syllabus statement on AI use, I'll read the excerpt to you. I said, more than anything, I want you to know that I value the perspectives you bring to our classroom, and I'm excited to see how your ideas and insights will contribute to our class community. In turn, I hope to see you share similar appreciation for the ideas of the authors we will read in this class. Tools like ChatGPT can diminish authors' knowledge and labor by failing to attribute where its ideas come from. Let's keep this in mind as we set out to learn and share knowledge in a responsible manner. So this was my hope to just kind of set the tone for what I hoped this class would be, the way we would view writing, the way we would view reading, and it was something we kind of returned to throughout the semester. It was the kind of foundation of how we did peer review. So when we were reviewing the work of one another, when we would engage with our readings and build on them through our class activities like the reading and writing exercises. And it was a particular use around citation. Thanks. So within the first year students for 1090, they struggle with citation. They've heard of APA, they might have had a little bit of practice, but they really don't get what it means to cite sources when they come into first year. When they come into first year university, a lot of the time. And I mean, more than anything, they assume citation is just a means to prevent plagiarism accusations. So that's what it's for. I'm going to cite so I don't get accused of plagiarism. They don't really get that, disciplines use citations in different ways, that different departments have different citation practices, and that it's tied to the ways, we distribute and share knowledge. So I tried to kind of tie it into that relational practice of flow composition and emphasize citation as a relationship building process. It means of recognizing and appreciating the work of others. So as students engage with their assigned readings, they're developing knowledge from the work and labor of those authors. They're refining that knowledge through their writing, which they share with their classmates, who give them feedback and contribute to that knowledge even more. And all throughout those processes, we're recognizing and showing appreciation of those relationships by citing their work. As mentioned in the syllabus statement, the hand-in-hand conversation with citation and academic integrity was always that aspect of erasure that can happen. We rely on generative AI at times. The training data of these LLMs are in a black box. We don't know from whom these ideas were scraped a lot of the time. Even if we're asking students to cite ChatGPT or give us their text transcripts, their chat histories, we're not seeing the work of the people behind that information. And that's not to say there's no place for that, but I do try to instill in students a recognition that the ways we write, the ways we make knowledge, and the ways we cite are very much tied to who we are as people, how we make relationships, especially in knowledge communities within the university setting. It's not to say that there's no place for this, but that the choices they make as writers and as thinkers should be tied to those values, how you want to share knowledge, you show respect to other people. So yeah, recognizing, I guess, the futility of just banning it, and not fully wanting to either, because it's interesting. I want to learn about it a little too. I did still want to ensure my students, had a means to approach writing at this new state of their university career in a way that maybe open their ideas to what writing is and what it means to write at this level. So I feel the slow composition pedagogy foregrounds process and that relationality in helpful ways that don't say you can't use ChatGPT, that at least get students thinking about what it might mean if I do use it. What am I saying about relationships, writing, and knowledge, writing process if I do? So I guess the AI literacy competencies tie back to the framework that I think I best was able to kind of get at with these three here, 16, 6, and 5. Yeah, so 16 and 6, we've talked about a little at the beginning, so I won't touch on them right now. But I want to spend a second on 5, because I think it's important, and it's one that, well, maybe not even if we're citing Long Magerko here, it's one that we're talking a lot about broadly at the university, and it's that identifying the tasks AI excels at and tasks it does not, determining when we can use AI and when we shouldn't. And I think I achieved this in my course on a task basis, thinking about, well, paraphrasing, it's not great at paraphrasing, so let's get better personally at it. But beyond tasks, there's other things like ChatGPT or whatever tools you're using isn't great at, and that's relationship building, right? There's no person there. So beyond that task level, which we focus on a lot, I really think my class was able to get to a place where they understood that I, as a human, as a writer, as a person in this university, can build relationships through my writing and show appreciation through my writing. And that's something that ChatGPT can't do very well. So that maybe I hope they carry that forward wherever departments they go after my class. They won't be naive enough to think they're never going to use it. They're going to use it. But yeah.
So some takeaways, I will continue from here for the time purposes. So we had different views on how a student should and should not use AI in the classroom. I'm coming from business faculty. We build or create competitive advantage. We add value by using those tools, like we make money out of it. So we should learn it. On the other hand, like critical reading and learning skill set is essential for a student. They should learn how to organize their thoughts. So we are not talking about all or nothing in the literacy. We should find our way to support a student's AI literacy. And if you remember the framework, it has one side, like which was like more end user's perspective, and then on the other side, or some of the some part of it was like developer AI literacy. So it was like the level of developer and programmer AI literacy. So they're different competency, and we should pick the one that is more suitable for our context.
And it's important to note too, I guess, that we did this in ways that very briefly, supported our existing learning outcomes. We didn't tear our courses down and start from scratch, have to build whole new infrastructures. or redesign the course. We were able to do this in ways that support what we already had. We still met our existing learning objectives. I think we probably added to them more than anything. We help students recognize potential problems with these tools and outputs, even while recognizing their value in a lot of contexts. And hopefully we boosted some student confidence around their values and their sense of human judgment. Like Sanaz mentioned earlier, students don't misuse these tools a lot of the time because they're inherently malicious, but it's because they're tired and they're stressed, and they lack confidence and they assume this computer could do something better than they can. So regardless of how you want to support that, I think it's important that we do it in ways that still develop their sense and value of their own judgment and their voice, like Jeanette said this morning too, developing that voice is always. So thank you very much, folks.
Thank
We have a
you.
few minutes for questions if there are any, but I appreciate everyone coming.
And if there are questions, we do. Hi, I'm Mark. Texas speaking. We do have some microphones. We do have your question.
Melanie, this is for you, and it's not a deep question, but it's sort of a procedural one.
Mm.
You mentioned that your department had insisted that it in class. Was that a response to AI?
So that's a really good question, and I'll answer it very diplomatically. I think I mean I don't know for sure that it wasn't communicated that it was, but I mean I think it had to be. Why not? Again, I teach as a per course instructor, so I'm not typically in those departmental meetings where those decisions are made. I assume it was a response to that because it came up this past fall.
Excellent question. Anybody else?
Curious, if you think it's critical that we do this, that we help them with AI literacy. I know,
I think
it's critical, it's questionable whether it was critical that everyone learn how to use graphic calculator, for example. And even people who may have needed it.
Yeah.
So do you think it's critical that we address this now?
So I think that's a really great question. And someone who never learned how to use a graphing calculator and has never needed to use a graphing calculator, I do think it's integral that we help students develop critical AI literacy. But I think it's an important distinction to make that does not necessarily mean helping them to use AI all of the time. I didn't spend any time instructing them how to use it in a way. And again, I guess on a personal level, I was of the mindset that I have no place to ask students to use these tools, and I don't understand the potential privacy breaches, how their data is collected or stored. So I never really invited them to engage in that way. Anytime we were working with outputs, they were always ones I generated and distributed for that reason. So I think there are ways that we can develop literacy around this, especially as everything we see online these days are generated by AI. Like you can't get a recipe that's not made up by someone. The amount of garlic is way off. It's never enough. So I think that literacy piece is important, but I don't think it needs to be conflated with using AI tools. Thanks. Thanks, Denise.
Yeah. So generally, what I hear is that from students who study in UK and officers who have the experience is that UK is various plagiarism is very considered a much bigger offense than compared to expensive. Even though in paper it's mentioned that it can lead to expulsion. In many cases where I believe the instructors are a little more lenient here. Whereas in the UK, they actually take more time to evaluate the assignments, and there is an indication of that in my country there's a business where people make money out of preparing assignments for students in the UK, but not from Canada. And when I ask them why not, the reason says that Canada you can get away with it. Whereas in UK, it's a much bigger offense. And it's something which officers who have UK experience say that. In that light, what do you think about how can policy or ChatGPT? If we make a more stricter or more stringent rule in terms of
Did you want to respond to that first?
What came to my mind when you said that was like, I think here it is easier, again, as an international student perspective, I think it's easier here for a student to use ChatGPT or any AI tools or do plagiarism than teachers judge. So like I cannot ethically copy and paste the student's assignment, even in Grammarly, to check if they are grammar-wise correct. I should ask a student and they should consent that I can use it with AI. So I think there are like more rules for teachers here to check assignment than like a student using those tools. So that was a little challenging for me because like I felt that I don't have enough support to use those type of tools. Even I cannot copy and paste your like a student assignment to ChatGPT and say, hey, did you generate these answers? Or I don't know, even like using other tools to find out if it's like human written or not. So I found it challenging. I had the same experience, but.
And I mean, I guess to respond to that policy perspective, because it's been an ongoing conversation around campus, and I think there are some folks who are, want that policy. They want that kind of top-down language, like this is my big stick that I can, that I can, wave around. But I really feel it's so. I mean, think again about, I guess, writing, and not that ChatGPT and generative AI is only about writing, but writing really is at the center of that in a lot of cases. Writing is so tied to individual disciplines' ways of knowing and doing, right? So that might be very applicable in business, for example. It's the way that discipline shares knowledge. It's the way they create knowledge. That's not the case in the humanities or some social sciences. So I don't think there is a lot of place for a very strict policy at a high level when we need a lot of nuance in how we approach these tools and their outputs at all levels, from students and for faculty use. With Sanaz, I don't think I don't think we have a right input student work into these detectors for many reasons. So I think we need a lot of flexibility in any policy, and maybe the UK doesn't have that, and that is to one detriment. But I do think it's a strength that we have that flexibility, because I think it's needed for different departments and different disciplines to have that ability to be agile and how they respond as it relates to their epistemologies.